So today we're going to talk about patterns 4 and 5. I'm actually going to make a separate video about pattern 6 because it is different. So the first thing I want to point out about patterns 4 and 5 is that they are actually the siblings of patterns 2 and 3. What your book has done, that not all books do, is separate the linking verbs by saying we're going to only talk about the to be linking verb, to be is a linking verb, for patterns 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to talk about all the other linking verbs for patterns 4 and 5. So again, it's not a random designation, but there's no greater meaning to it except that these particular textbook authors wanted to spend time focusing specifically on the verb to be before talking about any of the other linking verbs. So that's why this particular textbook has 10 patterns total. Not all textbooks would, though. Again, that's not really so important as remembering what each of these patterns ultimately stands for. Is it talking about an adverb? Is it talking about an adjective? Is it talking about a noun phrase? Is there a direct object? Those kinds of things. So patterns 2 and 4, and then patterns 3 and 5 are related. Alright, so other linking verbs that are not to be linking verbs are verbs such as this. The verb seem or seems, the verb smell, in other words, verbs that have to do with your senses, like feel, for example, sound, look, how something looks, become, and appear. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. It's just a small list with some examples so you can see what they mean, what they're usually related to. So all of them are transitive verbs. This is important to keep in mind because we're going to talk about intransitive verbs for pattern 6. Alright, so when you look at the word transitive, your focus is actually on the prefix here, the root word for trans, such as transfer, means there's some kind of connection. So the transitive verb connects things. When you say, like in our previous video, my professor is Dr. Wright, the linking verb to be, in this case is, transfers the identity of your professor to the name Dr. Wright. So, they connect. In other words, you cannot have a sentence that just says, he is. He is what? There has to be some kind of connection, there has to be some kind of transfer, because it's a transitive verb. The only exception to this is the famous quote from the Bible in which God says, I am. There is actually nothing else to the sentence. He says, the great I am, the great I am. So it's a declaration of existence. It is to say, for example, in the sentence, I think, therefore I am. That would be the only exception, the declaration of existence. But you're not going to run across that very often. So, transitive verbs transfer meaning from one side of the sentence to the other. Alright, so let's look at pattern 4 now. Pattern 4, again, has to do with adjectives, just like pattern 2. Alright. So, we'll use a similar sentence as last time. The students, last time we said are, this time we're saying seem. Seem diligent. Notice the slight change in meaning when you change the transitive verb in the sentence. If you're saying the students are diligent, you are declaring a truth about them, or at least the truth as you perceive it. When you say the students seem diligent, you're saying, well, that's what they appear to be. That's what they look like. Again, two other transitive verbs there, two other linking verbs. You're hoping it's true, but you can only comment from the outside. You're looking through the window going, well, the students seem diligent. Adjective, though, regardless. This looks exactly like pattern 2 when you diagram it. Again, always go to your core, your subject, or specifically your noun, and your verb as part of the predicate. Your core sentence, students seem. Students seem. Don't forget your determiner, the, and of course, your adjective. So, looks exactly like pattern 2, except you just have a different kind of linking verb here. Alright, let's take this opportunity to talk about sentences that have a pedestal in them. A sentence with a pedestal occurs when, in this case, the adjective is actually a prepositional phrase. So, our sentence in this case, that dance seems over the top. Okay. Dance, noun, seems, verb, here's your core sentence. That is a determiner. And then you have your prepositional phrase, over the top. As I said in an earlier video, prepositions, generally speaking, are everything a rabbit can do to a stump. The rabbit can go over the stump. So, over the top is prepositional phrase that is, in fact, an adjective in this case. So, dance seems. Now I'm going to have to make space for the pedestal. Don't forget your determiner. That happens a lot on student papers, that's why I keep saying that. Alright, now for your pedestal. It is an adjective, so you do need the slanted line. Then you need to create the pedestal. Prepositions get slanted lines. They're always on the slanted lines. Over, top, the. Alright, so here's where I want to point out something important. Please notice that in all diagrams, regardless of where it ends up, whether it's on a pedestal above the main line or if it's coming down off the line, your nouns and your verbs are on horizontal lines, always. Your determiners and your prepositions are on slanted lines. So, again, regardless of how complex the diagram gets and how many lines worth it has, your nouns and your verbs will be on horizontal lines, and your determiners and your prepositions will be on slanted lines. If you can keep that in mind, it'll get less confusing later. Alright. So, before I erase that pedestal, pointing out, again, the pedestal is necessary because the prepositional phrase is the adjective in this case. That's why it has to go up on a pedestal. You don't drop it down below the line. It's on the pedestal because, in other words, you would have said, that dance seems iffy. And then you said iffy here. So whatever you're saying that you're replacing that adjective with the prepositional phrase goes up on the pedestal because it's taking the place of what would otherwise be one single word as an adjective. Alright, let's talk about pattern 5. In pattern 5, just like pattern 3, you're going back to your noun phrase. NP1 equals NP1. In other words, the subject of the sentence, the noun and the subject of the sentence, is the same thing as the one in the predicate, the noun and the predicate. Remember what page I put my notes on. Here we go. Alright, so in this example, again, talking about students, the students became scholars. Linking verb, became. So, noun, verb, students became. You're saying, again, transitive verb, you're linking the word student to the word scholar, in which you're saying the students equal scholars. The students are scholars. So NP, noun phrase, 1 equals NP1. This is the same noun phrase. It has the same referent. That's the fancy word in grammar. It's the same referent. So it's exactly like pattern number 3. Students became. Here's your core sentence, as always. Well, okay, that's great. What did they become? Because if you just say, the students became what? You haven't said anything yet. Again, transitive verb. In this case, they became scholars. Well, that is our goal for you, after all. Don't forget your determiner. The. Alright, so I'm going to throw an extra on this sentence. The students became very bright scholars. So now I've added a predicate adjective. In other words, an adjective that is in the predicate. They're bright. What kind of scholars? Bright scholars. Not just bright scholars. Very bright scholars. When you add the word very to your adjective there, this is what you do. The word very is modifying the word bright. Therefore, you have to attach it to the word bright with this little L shape here. Very bright. Again, notice. I've got a different color. Horizontal line, noun, noun, verb, slanted lines, determiner, your adjective, and it technically is an adverb because it's modifying an adjective. Going sideways. Now below the line because you are dealing with a noun, 2 noun phrases. NP1 and NP1. There. So, if you're describing what's on the main line for this NP1, your adjective goes under the noun. If you modify this adjective by saying it's very bright, well, now you have to put a little extra L under bright. Okay, again, if at any time this gets confusing and you need more help than just me talking to a camera, please email me and let me know, and then I can Skype with you or Zoom with you or whatever in order to get you more help. Don't think that anyone finds this easy the first time. I didn't, trust me. Alright, so again, next time, talking about pattern 6, which is where we talk about intransitive verbs.